So, in the midst of this pandemic, we are seeing so many things go virtual, right?
Yeah, pretty much almost
Everything, pretty much
everything.
everything,
Really, everything's gone virtual. Hmm.
from school to extracurriculars for kids to courses, classes, fitness, any sort of anything is now online, right?
Yeah, and yeah, anything's being taught online or any sort of gathering, right?
Okay. So here's my question. How long is this going to be sustainable for as a business model?
I think it's interesting because I think it depends on the business you're in. So, like for us, we've always been digital, right? This is where we thrive, right? So for us, nothing has changed. I think what's interesting is, and I know we've talked about this before. Like I'm going to jujitsu classes online, and there's like a ton, especially like fitness. There's every gym, whether it's big, small, is offering online classes. And why? Because you have a monthly membership and you need to teach your students. But I think it's interesting when you break that down, right? Because almost everyone's offering it, and a lot of people are offering it for free now. So how is that going to be sustainable? How are those businesses that have that subscription model going to make money? I mean, I understand people have always been teaching these things on YouTube, but when you're getting personal instruction, it's much different. So how are they going to sustain is really, I think, probably one of the, good example of a business where you may see a lot of change in the future.
I guess the thing I can't wrap my head around is, there are certain things that at some point I would say, all right, I need the real thing now.
Hmm.
Whatever it is, whether it be going to a classroom, going to, a
Yeah.
facility where you paint crap, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
At some point, I would say I need the real thing. This is a temporary thing, but a lot of people are saying, oh, this is the, new way. And, things
Mhm.
will, I don't know, a lot of things will change and evolve.
Well, mhm.
Do you think there are some businesses that can continue on this way in the long run?
I,
And there are some that definitely cannot.
I do, and I think there's some sort of like if we're talking about learning a new skill, right? So say we're talking about painting, right? People have learned to paint. Oh my gosh, what's the Bob Ross, right? People
Mhm.
learned to paint via Bob Ross, right, for decades. So, and that was remote, right? You were watching on TV, you were mimicking it, and you were learning techniques, right? And I think things like that work, right? You don't necessarily need to be in the same room. I think there are things where you need to be in the same room. And I think masterclass, and that's, I know we didn't really talk about this, but in our last video, but masterclass is one of those things you've seen a lot of promotion around. I don't know if they're doing more business, but people learning remotely. I think the biggest thing of where it becomes not sustainable, and this is to your point, where when it's a lot of these businesses, if we talk about gyms, whether they're, somewhere you would go, they're local businesses, whether they're a small business or a big business, it almost doesn't matter. They're a local business. So they're in your community or they're the next town over, right? So you're able to go there and you sometimes just go there because it's closest to your house. Now the question is with everything being digital, right? Everything transformed. Now you could go like masterclass and study with the best people in the world in whatever you're interested in, whether it's Pilates or it's yoga or it's jujitsu. And I think what's going to happen for like those mediocre people, right? Those people that had a school and it was in the neighborhood, like they had a karate studio and it was in the neighborhood. So, you send your kid to karate and it's just the local neighborhood karate studio. And that guy is not world famous or has some following or influence, or that person, her business is going to close, or his business is going to close because you're going to go study with the world renowned person or the person that has the most
But
social
is that
influence.
really is that really personal enough? I mean,
Well, here's the thing. I mean, if you're doing like one-on-ones or if they're seeing and they're correcting what you're doing, now you're not getting the physical interaction. So I think that's a different point we got to talk about. But the learning process, right, has now become a digital process if we look at that. And I think like here's the thing. If you're really into yoga, and why wouldn't you study with the highest level yoga people, especially that they're offering it for free? Now you're seeing what they teach at first. Why wouldn't you go study with them when it's no different than studying with your local person? And I'm not saying you shouldn't support your local community. That is not what I'm saying. I just think what happens is if you're trying to evolve your own personal skills, you're probably going to want to study with the people that could give you the most, right, in that growth. And sometimes maybe that is that local person, but a lot of times that may be someone in a different country or someone. So I think you're going to see a lot of that opening up because people are now experiencing that where they weren't experiencing that. They were going to their local place pre-pandemic, and they weren't really experiencing that remote teaching.
I mean, for me, I feel like it's at some point it's like I wouldn't pay for this. I wouldn't pay for a virtual class or whatever it might be because you kind of get lost. And if it's one-on-one, I'm sure you can get something. I think there are some things, for example, like psychiatry and I think that is a business model that is definitely can see a future in virtual.
So here's what I'll ask then. What's the difference then in watching an expert on people buy, like in jiu-jitsu, people buy like a DVD of this famous jiu-jitsu guy and they buy it to learn their techniques, right? What's the difference? To me it's the same. The thing that I think really is going to get you back to that local place is, I'm going to use the example I know in jiu-jitsu is because you need to train with other human beings to test your skill, right? So you need that contact, and human beings are social creatures. You need that contact. For us, we needed to see, okay, how is my jiu-jitsu coming along versus so-and-so? There's only so much you can practice with someone who maybe lives in your house or a dummy or, imagine how techniques work. So I think those places will come back in many ways, but I think it's interesting because the person I study with is a grandmaster, so he's a 9th degree red belt, but but I study under one of his 7th degree black belts, which is really high in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I'm already studying with someone who's like a really high level, but I think if I probably wasn't, I don't know, would I look at other options? Yeah, I probably would, if I was studying at a more, at someone that wasn't like a world champion, yeah, I probably would, see what's around, One
of the things that I think might happen or could, well, what I think should happen, I'm not that important, but I think when you look at, university, a lot of students are already saying, if I have to go back to college in the fall and it's still online, I don't want to pay that, right? I don't want to pay the tuition for that. So one of the things that could happen in this world where we're learning remotely, at the college level, I'm not talking at the child level, but let's say at the university level, dropping tuition and getting more students because now you can get them from anywhere and everywhere.
Well, absolutely. And I already know a few people, that are college age where they've actually refunded them. Because in the budget they have, especially like state universities and things like that, they have in the budget maintenance for the buildings.
Right.
Maintenance for the buildings, right? So they've already actually issued them refunds of part of their tuition because they're not using those buildings. So they've actually issued. So yeah, you're looking at the cost of universities. Like if it stays this way, the cost of universities coming down. Now, what's crazy is
not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying it is.
No, it's not.
Because it could actually be better financially, from a business perspective for the university if they're getting more students, quantity.
And this is nothing new. I think what's going to happen is you're going to see an acceleration in the universities that were designed for this, right? That were already doing it, versus the universities who are like, oh man, now we got to catch up because they're not going to have the infrastructure in play. And I think that's part of the problem a lot of people are having right now. The especially like you look at governments and things like that. I spoke to people that are like, oh, you just got a VPN. You just got a VPN. Like people using VPNs for, 20 years or whatever the case is, right? To log into their machines at work. And I think you're going to see many companies excel and many businesses excel that were already digital and already have that remote piece going and that remote learning. And the ones that didn't are going to have a harder road, unfortunately. And I think a lot of people are adapting. Don't get me wrong. And, you want all the businesses to succeed, especially the small ones, right? You want those small mom and pop shops to do well. And I think they just need to find the right tools for their audience, you know, their users or their customers.
Like, look, there are some industries, you know, you look at retail, let's look at clothing, for example, or jewelry or something like that. Look, I understand the value of a physical store. I know online shopping is very popular, but there are still people who want to try things on and make, you know, and they have some programs now where you can try it before you buy it, right? But think about that. If we eliminated stores, what would that, how would you sustain that business in letting people try things on? And it's just, it gets massive.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of apps out there that like let you put the clothes on yourself or the hairdo on yourself or right, whatever. I'm not saying
it's on your waist or, you know, there's you got to try them on. So yes, on a small scale, you can try things on and then return them. But if there were no physical stores,
you know, I mean, you know, I don't know what the outcome's going to be because you know, unfortunately, there were so many businesses that were on the brink before this happened that unfortunately, some of those businesses are probably not going to make it through. And I agree with you. It's hard to try stuff on. I mean, I think we've all bought stuff online and it doesn't fit right. And you're like, shoot, man, I got to send this back to Amazon. And, you know, and they make it pretty easy. Like most online retailers make it pretty easy to return stuff. But, you know, I think it's, you know, it's just unfortunate because now you're going and waiting, but, you know, another 2 days to get your new pair of pants or whatever you got versus if you tried them on at the store, you would have them instantly. And the reality is, you know, I mean, look, doctors are doing the more the teledoc thing, you know, like, oh, look, I hurt my thumb. Here's my thumb.
You hurt your thumb. You couldn't get a tetanus shot in the computer.
Right. I couldn't get a tetanus shot. And what's funny is when I called, they were like, hey, you know, we would do a teledoc, but we really need to see it to see if you need a tetanus shot, you know, because we don't know if you've had a tetanus shot because, you know, I moved and then I was like, I don't remember if I had a tetanus shot. So, you know, and so I had to go in to get the tetanus shot. But you're right. There's some things you're always going to need in person. I don't know what, I think there are many things that are going to go back to normal. Like, I think people will go, and I'm going to use the jiu-jitsu example. They're going to go and they're going to have to train at a jiu-jitsu academy to have contact with other human beings, right? I think there are certain businesses where you don't necessarily need the equipment or you don't necessarily need, like, think about like Tonal and Peloton and all those other things. They're pretty much eliminating a gym. Like you physically having to go to the gym. And this was before this, right? So there were people already going, I just want to work out at my house. I mean, people have been working out at home before they even started working out at gyms. They would just buy home. Now it's just smaller, easier. And now the instructors are there. So the experts are there. Right. So I think you're going to see unfortunately, you're going to see certain types of businesses go away. I think certain types where you need physical contact, you know, with another human being, those businesses are not going to go, you know, those like jiu-jitsu is not going to go completely remote. Maybe people will study in addition with other people, but it's not going to go away. That local academy is not going to go away.
Yeah. So if you guys think of anything else that, if you have an opinion on what'll be sustainable and what's not, feel free to comment and let us know. And let us know how you're planning on adapting your business. Because
and what you've done to become sustainable too.